are off. This is a blessed day. This is a good day. The Lord is with us. The Lord is with you. And we're going live. We actually started a few minutes ago and then realized something wasn't clinking or linking or tinking or thinking properly. But we got the link right now. So sorry about that delay. Um, yeah, we're still in Vancouver, southwest Washington, over in a rainstorm. And like I was joking yesterday, boy, did we come through a rainstorm coming here. But yeah, we had ministry time yesterday at two ministries in their gatherings. One was a lunch and one was an evening event with worship and prayer time. And oh, no, wow! Just the Lord met us. Part of what I feel is grief for non-believers. We think, this is just normal. What's normal? This blessing is normal to us, but non-believers don't know about this. And yeah, we kind of ended with an evangelistic plea. Hey, share this. Share this. You have the power. You have the riches. You have the presence of Christ. You have the wealth of heaven behind you as you share the love of God. And it was what a beautiful time. And there were people there that had come through some very grievous tunnels, but they were feeling triumphant. One lady, actually, two men in this extended fellowship had passed, and the widows were there, and
one was a widow, and one was a friend.
Yeah, one was a widow of, I'm not going to explain it right, but anyhow, but it was. I mean, you can't be going through a tougher thing, but the joy in the room, the resolve, the God rushing in and blessing lives and touching and giving. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Boy, the comfort of the Lord was there. The Holy Spirit is called the Comforter, and man, was he in the room. We went at 6 or something last night, and we're there till after 11. So I may look like the short night of sleep, because it is what happened. But things are good. Hey, 2 Corinthians 9, as we're wrapping up this chapter today, we reached 9:7 on Friday. Well, here's 2 Corinthians 9, verse 8. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, having all sufficiency, you may abound in every good work. I have a King James here. There's a song, God is able to make all grace abound to you. God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things and at all times and in all things, having all that you need, you will abound. Really a fun song. We did it at the college ministry I was pastoring in the 1990s, and man, when we would pull out this song, they would just do the intro and people would start hooting and hopping. It's such a victorious song because God is so giving. Hello to Tim Brooks. Good morning, brother. Thanks for hanging in there while we got past the technical clunkities at the beginning here. But we would do this song about the grace of God that gives and gives and gives. And by the way, grace is one of the main trademarks of Christianity exercised properly. We are not saved by good works. We are saved by grace. God's goodness and grace saves us. As a result, salvation plus grace equals good works. Good works plus grace does not equal salvation. We're saved by grace first, and then the result flowing from that, downstream from that, is good works and bounty and plenty and goodness. So anyhow, believe it or not, Carson Wentz, the quarterback of the Eagles, has the best explanation of this that I've ever seen. It really, I'm thinking, here's an NFL quarterback teaching theology on the international stage, and I think it's on YouTube or something, but I saw his equation of what equals salvation and the good works and the grace, the good works that result from God's grace. And I thought, now, God, I have studied under some of the greatest minds on the face of the earth, and an NFL quarterback gives the best explanation of grace I've ever seen. So it just it's I mean, he plays in Super Bowls and he understands grace. But that verse again, it really is triumphant. God is able to make. God can make all grace abound to you. Always having all sufficiency in all things, that you may abound in every good work. And you'll have all that you need. This is what God's grace is. Paul has talked about giving for most of 2 entire chapters now. And I mentioned this last week. This is the core, center, most precise, most vital teaching about Christian giving. And I'm telling you, the trillions and trillions and trillions of giving that has been done just by offering plates that have been passed in the churches of Europe and America, and now it's happening around the rest of the world. But the giving Christians in England and Scotland and Ireland that supplied the missionaries that took good news on the ships, the Industrial Revolution. It's kind of amazing how the Industrial Revolution financed a lot of the giving. And it was just giving people, believers. Have the people of England and in their travels and such, have they been all perfect in their thing, in all their Christian exercise and activity? No. The Boxer Rebellion happened because some of the English people were not doing nice things in China, but it wasn't the missionaries doing this. It was the industrialists that were thinking, hey, well, let's add this to our business endeavors or that. I'm focusing on the good that's resulted from this. Someone who deviates from the scriptures, God didn't tell him to do that, and you can't blame God on someone who doesn't obey him. You can't judge a faith or a movement by someone who exercises it wrongly. Well, I went to a church once and they visited, and I'm not ever going back. Woody Harrelson says this. Oh, I used to be in study for the ministry, but it's all a bunch of hypocrites. That's cheesy and easy. If you want to walk out, but on Judgment Day, you can't point to God, because you can't point to someone who disobeyed God and say, see, look what the people are getting. God didn't tell them to do that. Grace is a force that can't be diluted, that can't be canceled, and everybody's invited into God's grace, including the people who aren't there yet and may come into church and make a mistake. I'm doing too much covering for Christians who've erred here, but grace is still grace, and God keeps giving, and God stays gracious, and God keeps pouring out the bounty. We are placed in blessing. As it is written, verse 9, he has dispersed abroad. He has given to the poor, and his righteousness remains forever. That is a quote from Scripture elsewhere. In this Bible I'm using right now, it doesn't say where it's from. I would just tell you. He has dispersed abroad. I'm driving a hay truck right now in the mornings during the finishing of this harvest. and I go through the apple orchards of Yakima Valley, I'm astounded at the apples. And the apples and the apples and the apples and the trees and these apples that you can't see the end of it. I think I heard that in 2015, it's the last stat I heard, that there were so many apples that they have these 900-pound bins, and the bin weighs 100 pounds, so they're 1,000 pounds to lift up and put them on the truck, and there's 2 bins wide, and they go the length of the truck, I think 10 down and 2 deep. And the trucks just keep going and going and going to the cooler. So, years ago I drove an apple truck over to the docks in Seattle, and these apples get put in refrigerated trucks, and they go to Japan, and they go to Asia. The apples from Yakima Valley, you buy a McDonald's apple pie anywhere in the world, and the apples came from the Yakima Valley, or within an hour radius of the Yakima Valley. But how many apples are they? And someone explained to me once, well, in 2015, last I've heard of the stat, they had so many apples that you could put those bins, 1,000-pound bins, in a row, and the row would go clear around the world. Do you know how many apples this is? God knows. Nobody else does. Not just 1 bin wide, 4 bins wide. 16 feet across, apples, 3 feet deep, 25,000 miles. I'm thinking, my mind can't handle that stat, that picture. You know what this is? This is bounty. Bounty, bounty, bounty. The horrified, the people that were horrified by the Mount St. Helens blowing. It blows this ash. Well, what happened when the ash blew from Mount St. Helens? It all landed in the Yakima Valley, 1980, and it refertilized the ground. So from 1980 to 1995, during those 15 years, while the trees were absorbing the inner earth minerals from the volcano blast, during those 15 years, 1980 to 1995, 15 years straight of pure, are you kidding me, bounty. A bounty crop of the apples and his nectarines and peaches and everything. It's like, oh my goodness. But this is, God's grace is like this. And Paul is talking about this. A grace that is like this in chapter 9 at the end. Now he that ministers seed to the sower, both ministers bread for your food, and it multiplies your seed sown and increases the fruits of your righteousness. When you put a pound of seed in the ground, whether it's apple trees or whatever, a minimum of 100 times over comes back in harvest. 100 to 1. I mentioned this on Friday. That's 10,000% interest. And this is an agricultural picture that I'm giving you. He talks about bread and sowing and multiplying. This is the way God's grace is. It gives and gives. And I love that hymn, out of his infinite riches in Jesus, he gives and gives. It's a King James written song. He giveth and giveth and giveth again. God just keeps giving. The trees and the fruit trees and the fruit fields and the farms of the world, there are seasons that come and go, and it isn't always a bounty crop. Things come in cycles and they have to be refertilized and stuff like that. But we don't just come to a point in life where all the farms and trees, well, this we're going to take a decade off now. You have nothing to eat. No. And God doesn't take a time off either. He allows things to happen in our lives so that something in our attitudes can get exposed and remedied and such. But the giving of God, these 2 chapters, 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, giving that keeps on giving and giving and giving. Verse 11, being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causes us to have thanksgiving to God. I'm trying to de-King James it here. I haven't studied the King James in a while, so I'm a bit bumpy with it, but maybe I'll try to read exactly how the King James says it here. Being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causeth through us thanksgiving to God. You know that holiday that happens late every November on the fourth Thursday in November every year? Abraham Lincoln started that. I think it was 1863. You know what had just happened? Abraham Lincoln himself, I've read it in his diary, he had just, as he says in his diary, he had just consecrated his heart to Christ. He had just given his heart to Jesus. He understood a lot of the Bible, but it said when he gave the Gettysburg Address and he saw the crosses, the grace of God finally made sense to him. He had a presidency that matched the Civil War almost to the day. He was inaugurated, the Civil War started. And this Civil War ran until like a week and a half before he died. His life was his presidency was the Civil War. The grief, he would read these reports, 58,000 Americans killed at Gettysburg, and it would just wretch him in grief. His son Willie died while he was in the White House. He was raised with the Bible. He didn't really understand salvation, but at Gettysburg, he goes, wow, I get it. The cross of Christ. He saw the crosses and the graves, and he gave the Gettysburg Address. That morning, he had given his life to Christ, his heart to Christ. And he was so thankful and so joyful, and the Gettysburg Address still is a heart stopper to this day, that he's instituted Thanksgiving. Did you know that? I know, it's amazing. But this Thanksgiving that comes from us receiving all of God's giving. It makes us thankful, and it makes us to be giving people. I hope you can put this together. It's fascinating how what's the word? Giving kind of catapults off of itself. And the stories of how giving has changed the world. Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier this month or last month. Somebody, it's amazing to me. Britain's in big changes right now. Church attendance has grown 800% this year in Britain. The Brits have been quite the cynics, and a lot of them, and church attendance had withered off to 3% of the country, but it's back up to about a quarter of all Britain is going to church right now. 16 million, down from 1 or 2 million, 16 million, and growing. It's wow. Now my point I was getting at with that. The giving of the Brits, the cynics. Oh, come on. Oh, we'll move on. Shoot, that was bogus. I went on something that was beyond my notes. Oh. I'll go on to verse 12. For the administration of this service, as he's taking this gift to Jerusalem, not only supplies the want of the saints, but is abundant to also by many thanksgivings unto God. The way the King James is throwing me a little bit here. The administration of this service, this gift that's being administered responsibly, and it's what it's being gathered for, it's going to be given to, and it's the saints in Jerusalem. For the administration of this service not only supplies the want of the saints, but is abundant also by many thanksgivings to God. So the giving is growing, the thanksgiving is growing, and like I said, we have a holiday. And what's it called? It's called Thanksgiving. And I read an article in the early 90s that fascinates me today. And they say how Thanksgiving is the one holiday that can't be corrupted. How do you corrupt gratitude? You know, Christmas has been turned into reindeers and Santa Claus in commercials, and I see these people making mad rushes for shopping, and people actually, you know, these toys are flying off the shelves, and they get into where there's one left, and two ladies grab this, both of them want it for their kid, and this cat fight breaks out. I mean, how can this happen from Christmas? Easter, it's turned into bunnies and candies and chocolate and eggs, and these are Christian holidays that are kind of, they can go askew. Thanksgiving, how can Thanksgiving be corrupted? There's no way to corrupt gratitude. When someone's has gratitude or shows gratitude or gives gratitude, it causes more grace, which causes more giving, which causes more joy. It's a very, very Christian concept. And beautiful things happen from our giving and our Thanksgiving. I remember the British thing. Some Brit was going, oh boy, these Christians, these traveling British atheists that are on YouTube. I'm thinking, guys, when are you going to get over your anger about something else? Is this really your life mission? This, I fizzed it, lost it again. Well, do you remember what it was? Oh, crud. Oh, this guy says, so we have all these charities in Britain, though, and they're all run by Christians, and these charities do great things all over the country. The Salvation Army is one of them. If all Christians believed like you, all the charities nationwide would shut down in a day. Do you want that to happen? Oh, no, that's really a good thing. And I remember hearing some very cynical non-Christian commentator on the radio in San Francisco, and he's gone now. But he says, oh, well, you know something, as much, I'm not a believer, but Christians really do a lot of good all over the world. The charities of the world would collapse in a day if all Christians just stopped giving. We lead the way in the beautification and the blessing of the world by being like this. So let's keep up this giving and giving to the work of God and the endeavors of God. Giving causes more praise and more glory to God. Like I said, it catapults on itself. It causes more prayer, and it causes more grace to happen and more thanksgiving, which leads to more giving. It's amazing what happens through giving, and God knows this, and that's why He gives first. He gave His only Son first. He didn't wait for us to get our act together. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. God didn't say, well, when they clean up their act, then I'll send my Son. That's like saying, well, someone just had an accident, but after they get themselves better, then we'll send in the doctor. God gives the need. He gives first, and He leads by being gracious. I don't know if you have heard of Laterno College in Texas. His last, or one of his last pastors, was my uncle. My uncle knew him. And the things that R.G. Laterno did and built and invented, he invented things that changed off the offshore oil drilling rigs. He invented other things that are, I couldn't explain it, but I've seen these devices, and it's the telescoping nature of fabricated steel. There's no way to explain it without getting lost in it. inventions lead to a lot of payoff, shall we say. And then he ended up getting so much money for each one of these that was manufactured all over the world. The guy that invented the not the dimmer switch, but the wiper interval device, so you can make the wipers go 1 per second. You can make them go 1 every 10. The guy that invented that, he gets paid something like $20 million a year for that invention. R.G. Letourneau had inventions that were so massive, and the payoff was so huge that he just started giving more. He got to where he was giving 90% of his income to charity. I spoke at a church in Peru once, and I saw this huge cathedral up on this hillside, and I thought, wow. And I said, yep, R.G. Letourneau paid for that building. What? My uncle was his pastor. Oh my goodness. And there's actually there's a Letourneau law in the federal tax books. If you give 90% of everything you earn to charity, you have to pay no taxes on anything at any level anywhere else in your income. The final 10%. Did you know the CEO of Caterpillar gives 90%? He lives by the Letourneau law. He gives 90% of all he earns to charity. Salvation Army, Wycliffe Bible Translators, House of Hope, whatever. Can you imagine having so much that the 10% left over of your income, you couldn't spend all that either, and your investments kept growing? This is what happens. God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, you will have all that you need. And throughout this little run of scripture here, from verse 8 to 15, it talks about the bounty that keeps growing, the gratitude that keeps growing, the joy of all the people that are giving to each other. It's amazing. Wrapping it up here at the end here. While by the experiment of this ministration they glorify God for your professed subjection to the gospel of Christ, and for your generous distribution unto them and unto all men. When they got to Jerusalem with the gift, they didn't go, oh, well, you get some, but you're not as righteous, so you don't get so much. They didn't do that. They just gave, like God just gives and gives. And out of his infinite riches in Jesus, he gives and gives and gives again. Wrapping it up here. And by their prayer for you, which long after you, they long for you in their prayers. Oh, Lord, touch them. Lord, supply them. Lord, give them joy. Lord, give them everything they need. They long for these people. That long, and by their prayer for you, which long after you, for the exceeding grace of God. Exceeding, excess, more. Can you deal with excess? Exceeding grace of God. Thanks be unto God for his unspeakable gift. After Paul speaks about all the aspects of this gift and this giving and the amazing thing that results from it all, he's spoken so much about it, and he calls it an unspeakable gift. There's even more. There's even more. There's even more. Oh my goodness. I mentioned about paradise and the size of heaven, the size of the city. You know, you're not going to get up there and look around, I've seen better. Nobody's going to say that. It's going to go and go and go and go. And the city of heaven isn't the boundary of heaven. There's going to be access and mobility and things that I can't even describe here. Anyhow, God's grace abounds. Let's prepare for this bounty, this holiday, this Thanksgiving season that's coming up. And as we do, the Lord will bless you. The Lord will keep you. The Lord supplies you. The Lord enriches you. The Lord beautifies you. The Lord strengthens you. And the Lord calls your name because you are so holy and dearly loved. You be blessed this day.